Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we're diving headfirst into a story of intense political maneuvering, fierce warfare, and some serious dynastic ambition. We're looking at Clan MacLean. Now, when most of us hear the word clan, we typically just picture a family with a shared name and a nice tartan. But the MacLeans, they were so much more than that. We're talking about a historical, political, and military juggernaut that literally shaped the map of Scotland. Okay, let's dive right into this. The entire trajectory of this incredibly powerful clan really pivots on one massive question. How exactly does a Highland clan engineer a royal bloodline? Well, we're going to look at a strategic marriage of alliance that was so bold and honestly so geopolitically significant that it actually required a pope's blessing. It was an absolute masterstroke that forever changed Scottish history and sealed the fate of the MacLeans for centuries to come. To really wrap our heads around this clan's narrative, we have to start with their ancient cultural identity. So the anglicized surname MacLean actually comes from the Scottish Gaelic Mac Gilly Ahane. And that's a patronymic name that literally translates to son of the servant of St. John. I love this detail because this linguistic root grounds the clan firmly in the ancient Gaelic-speaking heartland of Scotland. It ties their origins back to a time when faith, lineage, and the sword were just completely intertwined. Section 1. Origins in Dalriada. Let's transition over to those deep historical roots. The lineage of the MacLean chiefs is just a fascinating journey through Scottish history. Now, while some older, kind of fanciful theories out there tried to claim they had Norman origins, the clan's own hereditary historians confidently trace their descent all the way back to the 6th century royal house of Lorne MacEric. He was a king of the ancient realm of Dalriada. Fast forward a few centuries to around 1050 AD, and we see a guy named Old Dugald of Scone serving as a judex, basically a judge and a counselor to the King of Scots. Then, by 1263, the clan's martial legacy is totally cemented by Gillian of the Battle Axe at the Battle of Largs. And all of this paves the way for the 14th century rise of the brilliantly cunning 5th chief, Lachlan Lubenac. Section 2, Gillian of the Battle Axe. Let's look closer at this legendary 13th century figure. So Gillian was the true progenitor of the clan as we know it today. He was a Celtic warrior renowned for wielding his chosen weapon with just extreme dexterity. Picture this. It's 1263, and the armies of the Norwegian king Haakon invade, really threatening the Scottish coasts. Well, it was Gillian and his followers who led this ferocious charge against the Norsemen at the Battle of Largs, and they helped decisively defeat the invaders. This battle really highlighted the inherent martial prowess of the early MacLeans. In fact, his skill in combat was so legendary that his descendants proudly bear a battle axe in their crest to this very day. It's a permanent visual tribute to their warrior origins. Section 3, Right Hand of the Isles. Let's move to this next era and see how their power really builds. By the 14th century, the MacLeans were governing a massive maritime kingdom alongside the MacDonalds. This was known as the Lordship of the Isles. And as their premier vassals, the MacLeans acquired some absolutely incredible hereditary titles. As Lieutenant General of the Isles, they actually commanded the Lordship's naval forces and galleys. They were the steward of the house, which meant they controlled vital territories like Tiree. Plus, they were chamberlain of the household, putting them right at the absolute center of the lordship's financial and courtly affairs. So they weren't just muscle, right? They were the indispensable military and administrative arm of the kingdom. They were essentially the right hand of the Isles. And that military might? It was absolutely staggering. At the height of their power and independence, the bellicose MacLeans of Duart could raise an incredibly formidable force of over 2,000 men. Now, to put that into perspective, in the context of the Western Highlands and Islands back then, having a highly trained, battle-hardened force of that size made them nearly invincible in regional conflicts. That is a massive deal. Section 4, the 1367 Papal Dispensation. This is the big one, where they become major players on the royal stage. Now, what's really interesting about this is the sheer geopolitical synergy of the match we're about to discuss. This right here is the absolute climax of our story, a true masterstroke of political pragmatism. On one side, you have Lachlan Lubenac MacLean, the premier military commander and naval lieutenant in the Hebrides, and he marries Mary MacDonald. But Mary isn't just anyone. She is the daughter of John of Islay, the first Lord of the Isles. And even more importantly than that, she's the granddaughter of King Robert II of Scots, the very first monarch of the House of Stuart. This is the exact moment military might merges perfectly with a royal Stuart bloodline. But wait, this wasn't exactly your standard polite royal courtship. According to historians of Duart Castle, it was a love match, sure, but Mary's father wasn't exactly thrilled at first. In fact, he was only persuaded to allow the marriage after he was kidnapped by Lachlan. No way, right? And during this incredibly bold, aggressive political maneuver, the chief of the rival MacKinnon clan was actually killed. Lachlan Lubbock basically forced the issue, proving once and for all that the MacLeans would take what they wanted, up to and including a royal alliance. Because these two families were so closely related, and honestly because of the massive political implications of this marriage, they desperately needed the approval of the church as insurance. So, on May 3, 1367, Pope Urban V steps in and issues a papal dispensation. Now, the marriage had already been consummated, but this dispensation retroactively blessed the union. It was the ultimate insurance policy. It ensured that the marriage could never, ever be annulled by political rivals who might be looking to strip the MacLeans of their newfound power. And this specific papal dispensation is a massive historical milestone. It is literally the first official mention of a MacLean in any governmental or ecclesiastical archive. Think about that. With a single stroke of the Pope's pen, Clan MacLean stepped right out of regional folklore and firmly onto the international recorded stage. They forever tied their fate to the Scottish royal sphere. Section 5. Duart Castle and Stuart Blood. So, the crucial point is, what were the lasting spoils of this alliance? So, what did the MacLeans actually get out of this audacious move? Well, the gains from this single marriage were just astronomical. First up, the dowry included Duart Castle. This was a heavily fortified strategic stronghold on the Isle of Mull, and it became the clan's absolute seat of power for over 300 years. Second, they were granted vast territorial lands across Mull. These were lands that the MacDonalds essentially stripped from the Mackinnons and just handed right over to the MacLeans. But most significantly, they gained royal Stuart blood. And this wasn't just about prestige. It forged this deep ideological and personal kinship bond. Basically, the MacLeans and the Stuarts were now family. But as you'll see, that royal blood carried a really heavy price. The introduction of Stuart lineage forged a loyalty so intense that the MacLeans consistently prioritized the royal cause way above their own survival for centuries. I mean, they suffered devastating losses fighting alongside the king at the 1513 Battle of Flodden. They literally bled for the crown during the Wars of the Three Kingdoms. They participated in every single major Jacobite uprising to try and restore the Stuarts to the throne. And the ultimate penalty for backing the losing royal horse? By 1678, it led to the total loss of all MacLean lands. We're talking about a devastating dispossession that lasted for 221 years. It leaves us with this fascinating, almost tragic irony. The cunning 1367 masterstroke by Lachlan Lubbock brought Clan MacLean unimaginable power, a legendary fortress, and a royal bloodline. Yet, it was this very alliance, this unswerving, multi-generational loyalty to the House of Stuart that ultimately cost them everything they had built. So it forces us to ask, when you tie your family's fate to a crown, are you securing your legacy or are you simply sealing your doom?